Today I'm going to show you how to install the dual rear remote valve kit for the LS XG3000 and 3100 series tractors. Simply Country Tractors and Excavators, your new source of information, reviews, and how-tos on LS, Gateau, and more. And once again, this is the installation kit for the XG3000 and 3100 series tractors. So this dual rear remote valve kit comes with all of the parts you see here laid out on the table. The first thing you want to do is remove the 4 bolts underneath the seat. And you're going to want to remove the plug underneath the seat as well. And I would recommend clipping the seat belt together. That keeps everything nice and tidy when you pull it off. Now we already have a front loader on this tractor, so we need to remove this power beyond tube on the very bottom of the tractor here. You can loosen that up, let it drain out a bit. You can loosen it on the top as well. And once you have that removed, you're going to want to remove the rear wheel of the tractor. That gives you easier access to get the rest of the tubes in and out. So we'll get our jack in place, pull off the nuts and the bolts holding on that right rear wheel, and once that's loose, we'll go ahead and roll the wheel off to the side. There are 2 holes in the right side of the transmission housing. That's where we're going to put in our valve bracket. You'll need to move these hoses underneath the bracket, and then you're going to go ahead and put in 2 M10 by 20 millimeter bolts, and you can tighten those down. Next, we're going to grab a detent kit. Depending on what sort of attachments you're putting on, you may or may not need this. We're planning on using a backhoe, so by putting on a detent kit, we'll get the proper operation. We're going to remove those 2 bolts, remove the cap, and then we're going to take our Allen wrench and loosen this spring and pull it all the way off once it's loose. Now if we were to leave this spring on, anytime you press on the lever, this spring is going to push the lever back. With the detent kit, however, the lever is going to stay wherever you put it. There's no spring back action going on. So let's go ahead and pop the detent in place. And it doesn't matter which spot you put this onto. You just need to remember where you put it for later. Gonna go ahead and pop that back in, tighten it down. Once it's in position, you may have to push it down and give it a little click after you've tightened it in. But we're gonna go ahead and put the cap back on and bolt it back down, and then we'll be ready for the next step. At this point, you can go ahead and remove all of the plastic caps that come on the remote valve. So go ahead and pop all of those off the top, as well as the one on the side. And once you have those removed, we can go ahead and take this whole valve and set it right on top of the bracket that we just installed. There are 3 M8 by 60 millimeter bolts and lock washers. So go ahead and put these in place, and you can snug them down a little bit, but make sure you still have some wiggle room. Don't tighten these 3 bolts all the way down yet. Now we're going to grab this hydraulic supply tube. It has all of the right bends, so it will fit right onto your tractor. We're going to need 2 seal washers and 1 banjo bolt. So grab those pieces out of your kit and take them over to the tractor. And you can see with that wheel removed, we can slide that right into place and go ahead and put the bolt in place as you see here, once again with 1 seal washer in front and back. Go ahead and grab a second banjo bolt to install the tube onto the top of the valve. And you can go ahead and tighten that down on the front. This needs a 27 millimeter wrench, and you need a 22 millimeter wrench for the bolt on the top of the valve. Next, install the Power Beyond hydraulic tube between the rear remote valve and the top of the hydraulic lift housing. And once you have that in place, you can go ahead and tighten it down. Remove the rubber plug from the top of the hydraulic lift housing. You might need some needle nose pliers to pop that off. In this case, we didn't. You're going to grab the O-ring and pop that onto the return to sump tube. You'll use a banjo bolt with 2 seal washers on one end, and the other end you're going to go ahead and insert into the hydraulic lift housing port until the shoulder is seated against the housing. So make sure that's fully seated before you go ahead and tighten that down. Now we're going to install 2 extension adapters with seal washers into the forward port of the remote valve. Once again, that's the forward port, so that's going towards the front of the tractor. Next, we have 4 tubes that all look very similar. They are, however, different, but they are labeled from the factory, so check your instruction manual so you know which tube goes to which port. Make sure you install the 2 rearward tubes onto the lower ports first and get those tightened down, as you won't be able to access them if you put the 2 forward and uppermost tubes on first. You can go ahead and tighten those 2 down, and then you're going to fish the last 2 tubes in between and to the upper 2 ports, and once again use the appropriate banjo bolts and seal washers to tighten those 2 down as well. You'll notice on the 4 tubes facing out the back of the tractor, there's a flat spot on the bottom 2 with a angled notch on the top 2. That matches up to the locking plate. I find it easiest to go ahead and install the plate with the 4 holes on it first, and then slip the locking plate in behind it. Once you have the locking plate in place, go ahead and insert the bolt and start tightening that down. Once you have that in place, you can go ahead and insert the 2 bolts onto the upper bracket to hold the entire assembly together. Once you have the adapter bolted into place, you're going to want to make sure to go back to the valve that we installed earlier and tighten the 3 bolts that are holding it down to the valve bracket. Once you have that done, grab some thread sealant or Teflon tape, and you're going to put that onto the back of the tubes. Install your dust covers. In the way that we've installed it, we have the green going on the right side and the blue going on the left side. So just be aware that the matching colors go up and down, whereas it may be left to right on some other tractors or installation kits. Then we're going to go ahead and install our quick adapters on all 4 ports. Now you can go ahead and install the levers. Once again, make sure that the colors on the top of the lever match the ports on the back of the tractor. There's going to be 1 bolt for each lever to hold it in place. Go ahead and insert those 2 bolts and get them tightened down. Now earlier we had mentioned this was for a backhoe installation, so we installed a detent on one of the levers. And you can see here that if we turn the green lever, it stays in place, whereas the blue lever springs back to center. At this point, you're basically done. We just need to go ahead and put the seat back on. Make sure to reconnect the connector underneath the seat. Put those 4 bolts back in. Once you've done that, you can go ahead and grab that right rear wheel and bolt it back on the tractor as well. And we have our dual rear valve kit installed and ready to use. Thanks again for watching our channel. If you like this video, hit that like button, hit the subscribe, and leave us a comment below if there's something you'd like to see installed on an LS tractor.